This happened a few years ago when I was flying to Canada for a trip. It was a 6-hour flight, one of those flights where you really need to be comfortable because you're going to be stuck in that seat for a while. Midway through the flight, I was woken up by the person behind me kicking my seat. I thought it was a kid, so I ignored it at first. Kids kick seats, it happens, whatever. But after a few minutes of nonstop kicking, I turned around and saw that it was a guy in his mid-20s. Not a kid. A grown man. He was sitting with his friends, and they were all laughing and talking loudly. I asked him politely to stop kicking my seat. I could hear him and his friends snickering, saying something in a language I didn't understand. He stopped for maybe 30 seconds, then started up again. Harder this time. So I took my water bottle and slowly, carefully, I emptied half of it on top of his backpack that was sitting under my seat. I heard him freak out when we landed and saw the damage. It was satisfying as hell. Let me tell you the whole story. Let me set the scene for you because the context matters. I was flying from Chicago to Toronto for a long weekend trip. 6-hour flight, which isn't terrible, but it's long enough that you want to be comfortable. I'd booked an economy seat, middle of the plane, aisle seat. Not great, not terrible. I got on the plane, found my seat, and settled in. The flight was pretty full, almost every seat taken. I had my backpack with me, put it under the seat in front of me like you're supposed to, got my headphones ready, buckled in. The guy who sat behind me got on a few minutes later. He was with 2 friends and they were loud from the start. Laughing, joking around, talking across the aisle to each other. The kind of people who don't realize or don't care that they're on a plane with 100 other people trying to relax. I didn't think much of it at first. Young guys traveling together, they're excited, whatever. I put my headphones in, closed my eyes, and tried to get some rest before takeoff. The flight took off, and for the first hour or so, things were fine. I dozed off, half asleep but aware of the usual plane sounds, engine noise, people talking quietly, flight attendants moving around. Then about 90 minutes into the flight, I felt it. A sharp kick to the back of my seat. I woke up a little confused. Thought maybe someone had bumped the seat while walking by. But then it happened again. Another kick. And another. Someone was kicking my seat, repeatedly. I turned around to look, expecting to see a restless kid. Instead, I saw the guy behind me, mid-20s, talking to his friends, laughing, completely oblivious or just not caring that he was kicking my seat. I made eye contact with him for a second, hoping that would be enough to make him realize and stop. He looked at me, looked away, kept talking to his friends. The kicking continued. I'm generally a pretty patient person. I don't like confrontation. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. So I didn't immediately say anything. I waited a few more minutes, hoping he'd stop on his own. Maybe he didn't realize he was doing it. Maybe he'd shift positions and it would stop naturally. But it didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. Every few seconds, another kick. Sometimes light, sometimes harder. My seat would jolt forward slightly each time. I couldn't relax. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't even focus on the movie I'd started watching. Every time I started to tune it out, another kick would bring my attention right back to it. After about 10 minutes of this, I turned around again. This time I spoke up. I said, as politely as I could, "Hey, excuse me. Could you please stop kicking my seat?" The guy looked at me like I'd just said something ridiculous. His friends stopped talking and looked at me too. One of them said something in what sounded like maybe German or Dutch, I'm not sure. They all laughed. The kicker said to me in English, "Oh, sorry, man." But the way he said it, the smirk on his face, I could tell he wasn't actually sorry. He was mocking me. I turned back around, figuring, okay, at least I said something. Maybe now he'll stop. He didn't stop. Within a minute, the kicking started again. Not as constant as before, but deliberate now. Like he was doing it on purpose because I'd asked him not to. I felt my frustration building. I'd been polite. I'd asked nicely. And he was not only continuing to do it, but doing it more deliberately now. I turned around again. Made eye contact. Didn't say anything, just stared at him. He stared back, then deliberately kicked my seat again while maintaining eye contact. His friends laughed. That's when I realized this wasn't accidental. This wasn't a restless passenger who didn't realize what he was doing. This was intentional. He was doing it to be an asshole. And if he was going to be an asshole, I was going to do something about it. I turned back around in my seat and I started thinking, what could I do? I could call a flight attendant. But what would I say? This guy is kicking my seat? That feels petty to complain about, even though it was genuinely making the flight miserable. And honestly, I doubted a flight attendant would do much beyond asking him to stop, which I'd already done. I could ask to move seats. But the flight was full. There were no empty seats. And why should I have to move because this guy was being a jerk? I could turn around and escalate. Get angry, demand he stop, make a scene. But that felt like it would just make things worse. Plus, I didn't want to be that person causing drama on a plane. So I sat there stewing, trying to think of something I could do that would actually make him regret his behavior. That's when I noticed his backpack. When he'd sat down, he'd shoved his backpack under my seat. Not under his own seat, under mine. Which is technically fine, you're allowed to do that if there's space. But it meant his bag was right there, in front of my feet. I looked down at it. A decent backpack? Looked kind of expensive, actually. One of those outdoor hiking brands. And I could see through the mesh pocket on the side that it had stuff in it. Books, maybe? Or electronics, I couldn't tell exactly. Then I looked at my water bottle. I'd gotten it before boarding, one of those bottles you buy at the airport after security. It was still mostly full. And that's when the idea hit me. I could accidentally spill water on his bag. Not all at once, that would be too obvious. But slowly, a little bit at a time, make it look like condensation or an accident. I thought about it for a minute. Was this too far? Was this petty? Then he kicked my seat again, hard enough that my laptop almost fell off my tray table. Nope, not too far. He deserved it. I waited for the right moment. I didn't want to do this while a flight attendant was nearby or when he might notice. He and his friends were deep in conversation, laughing about something, not paying attention to me at all. Perfect. I opened my water bottle slowly. Took a sip like I was just drinking normally. Then I held the bottle low near the floor and very carefully tilted it over his backpack. I let a small stream of water pour out. Not a lot, just enough to start soaking into the fabric. I watched it darken as the water absorbed into the material. Then I stopped, closed the bottle, and waited. Nobody noticed. The guy kept kicking my seat occasionally, completely oblivious. A few minutes later, I did it again. Opened the bottle, took a pretend sip, then let a little more water pour out onto the bag. This time I aimed for the main compartment, where I figured he probably had important stuff. I did this about 5 or 6 times over the course of the next hour, just small amounts each time, letting it gradually soak in. By the time I was done, I'd emptied about half my water bottle onto his bag. The backpack was noticeably wet now. You could see the darker patches where the water had soaked through. But because it was under the seat, in the shadows, and because he wasn't looking, he had no idea. I felt a little guilty for about 2 seconds. Then he kicked my seat again and the guilt vanished. The rest of the flight was actually pretty peaceful. The kicking continued occasionally, but I didn't care anymore. I knew what was waiting for him when we landed. I spent the last hour of the flight in a genuinely good mood, imagining his reaction when he discovered his bag was soaked. When the plane finally landed and we started taxiing to the gate, everyone stood up to get their luggage from the overhead bins. The usual chaos of people trying to get off the plane as fast as possible. I stood up, grabbed my backpack from under the seat in front of me, and stepped into the aisle. I deliberately didn't look back at the guy behind me. I wanted to see his reaction, but I also didn't want to make it obvious that I'd done something. I moved slowly, pretending to organize my stuff, waiting for him to reach down and grab his bag. I heard it before I saw it. What the hell? Dude, my bag is wet. It's soaking wet. His voice was loud, panicked. I glanced back, trying to look casual, like I was just checking what the commotion was about. He was holding his backpack, and water was literally dripping from it. Not just damp, soaked. He was holding it away from his body, watching water drip onto the floor. One of his friends said something in their language, sounding confused. The guy said in English, "I don't know. It's completely wet. All my stuff is in here." He unzipped the bag and looked inside. His face went from confused to horrified. He pulled out what looked like a book, completely waterlogged. Then some papers, also soaked. He looked around frantically, like he was trying to figure out what happened. He looked up, like maybe something had leaked from the overhead bin. He looked at his seat, checking if something had spilled there. It clearly didn't occur to him that the water had come from above, from me. A flight attendant came over and asked if everything was okay. He showed her the bag, said he didn't know what happened. Everything was soaked. She looked concerned, said she was sorry, but there wasn't much she could do. Maybe file a complaint with the airline? But if nothing fell from overhead, it might just be one of those things. He looked devastated, and I felt zero sympathy. I grabbed my stuff and started walking toward the exit of the plane. As I passed him, I heard him still complaining to his friends about the bag, trying to figure out what happened. I walked off the plane, through the jetway, into the terminal, and I didn't look back. I went to baggage claim, got my suitcase, and headed to my hotel. The whole way there, I was smiling. Not because I'd ruined someone's stuff, but because someone who'd been deliberately rude and disrespectful for 6 hours had finally faced a consequence for their behavior. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it justified? I think so. Here's the thing. I tried being polite. I asked him nicely to stop. He not only ignored me, but deliberately made it worse. He chose to be an asshole, and sometimes, assholes need to learn that their actions have consequences. I don't know what was in that backpack. Maybe it was just clothes and they dried out fine. Maybe it was electronics and I cost him some money. I genuinely don't know, and honestly, I don't feel bad about it either way. You know what I do feel bad about? All the times I've let people get away with being rude because I didn't want to cause a scene. All the times I've stayed quiet when someone was making my life miserable because standing up for myself felt uncomfortable. This time I did something about it, and it felt good. So here's my advice. If you're on a plane and someone's kicking your seat, try the polite approach first. Ask them to stop. If they're a decent person, they'll apologize and stop. But if they're deliberately being a jerk about it, well, you've got options. And a water bottle. Just make sure you're subtle about it. And make sure you have plausible deniability. Could have been condensation. Could have been a spill from somewhere else. Who knows? The key to good petty revenge is that the person never quite knows for sure that it was you. They can suspect, but they can't prove it. And that uncertainty is part of what makes it so satisfying. Did I ruin a guy's stuff because he was kicking my seat? Maybe. Do I regret it? Not even a little bit. And the best part? For the rest of that trip, every time I thought about that 6-hour flight, I smiled instead of getting angry, because I knew I'd gotten the last laugh. Thanks for listening to my petty revenge story. And remember, if you're going to kick someone's seat on a plane, make sure you check where your backpack is. You never know what might happen to it.